Get set, podcast listener, and be ready to win with your mentor, motivator, and marketer, Cam Roberts. Grow your business and achieve your goals quickly with the latest tips, tools, and tactics on business, success, and marketing. Subscribe now and download your free resources at camroberts.com.au.
Hey everyone, Cam Roberts here, your friend in business, success and marketing. Welcome to the podcast show. Now today's special guest is Jason Bradshaw, and Jason has been in business for 14 years and in the decade since has led phenomenal transformations in some of Australia's and the world's most recognizable brands. What business wouldn't love a 300% increase in leads or 200% doubling of sales? And to think that is just a warm-up act. His key to success is all about the experience. Jason Bradshaw, welcome to the podcast show.
Thanks so much. It's fantastic to be with you today and obviously to connect with the audience.
Excellent. Now that's pretty impressive little bio there you've got. 300% increase in leads, 200% doubling your sales as a warm-up act. Before we kick off, just tell people who you are. How did you get to where you are today with working with some of Australia's best brands?
Well, Cam, I actually started my first business at the age of 14. I grew up in a family that wanted to give me everything, but I had really expensive tastes. And in the early 90s, computers were certainly not as cheap as they are today. So I decided to start my own business selling computers, mobile phones, telephones, office equipment, basically anything I could sell. And when I say anything I could sell, I had a client that was buying some computer equipment off me, and they said, "Oh, you don't happen to sell whiteboard markers, do you?" Well, of course, the answer was yes. Yeah. And as I often say to people, at 14, I wasn't Mark Zuckerberg, I wasn't Bill Gates. I wasn't actually manufacturing anything. I couldn't compete on price. Literally, I was going to the next town down the road and buying the computers, the whiteboard markers, putting a margin on them, and then selling them to local businesses and local individuals. And I was able to do so by competing on the service I delivered, not on the price. Right. Now, many decades later, I'm definitely not 14 anymore, but in every business that I've worked in, and government organizations, media companies, been in media more times than I'd like to mention, big box retail, one of the world's largest automotive brands, Volkswagen Group. In every one of those businesses, it doesn't matter what stage they were at, when we focused on improving the experience, whether that be for customers or employees, the business grew. Yeah. And that's been my entire career. And when I say that's been my entire career, and then I mentioned that I was the director of procurement transformation with the New South Wales government, people go, what on earth does experience have to do with procurement and government? And that's the beauty about experience, is that if you apply it to everything you do, you can have a true sustainable impact to customers and employees. When there was a time when buying a hospital bed, for example, would be what's the cheapest price we can get it. But when you start thinking about the patient experience, you go, well, is this bed going to lead to a longer stay in hospital, bed sores and all sorts of things. And you start to put the people back into the conversation as opposed to just being on price, and you get a better outcome, and you end up delivering a higher return on that investment. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Oh, that's excellent. I was going to add just cheekily that there's probably a lot of work there for governments to do, in providing service. Many people would argue that. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Now, in regards to businesses and brands, you mentioned Volkswagen, Big Box, many others that you've worked for. What do you think is the number one focus that that they need to do? You talk about providing a better service, and it all starts with service. But can you elaborate on that a little bit more, Jason?
Well, I think the best thing that businesses can do is get absolutely clear on what it is that they promise to their customers, right, what it is they promise to their employees. I think businesses, and small businesses in particular, the solopreneurs, the mum and dads with 5 to 10 people, tend to fall into the trap more so than perhaps, say, the Jetsstars and Qantas of the world, where they want to be everything to everybody. Think about myself. Do I sell whiteboard markers? Of course I sell whiteboard markers. And you don't make the rivers of gold. You don't have the streams of income coming in when you try to be everything to everybody, because you can't be consistent. You can't, hire the people that are passionate about what you're doing. You can't train everybody to do everything for everyone. You can't have processes and you can't repeat it. So if you're a small business operator or, the world's largest auto brand, get absolute clarity around what it is you promise and who that serves. Every single day of the week, there's Jetstar planes taking off with, virtually no seats left on them. And at the same time, Qantas is having planes go off with exactly, to the exact same destination, and they're also full. Now, Qantas is not trying to get Jetstar's clients, and Jetstar can't get the Qantas client, right? Because they're looking for different things. They're serving different audiences. But too often in business, we want to serve everybody, and we do a bad job instead of a great job for, our key audience.
Yeah, that's really good. You spoke about, the trap that many smaller businesses and mum and dad businesses fall into by, trying to serve everyone and provide everyone with everything. Do you think that it's a case of also too, like they overpromise in the beginning, like you with the whiteboard markers, like they overpromised, and so that does stretch them out, and does that then, limit their potential to actually serve their ideal buyer personas better?
Absolutely. But, when you overpromise, you end up just creating stress for yourself.
Right.
And usually create disappointment for your customer, right? Now, I'm not a proponent of under-promising and over-delivering, because that is also not a sustainable business practice, because what are you over-delivering if that's what you always do? So get really crystal clear about what it is that you promise. FedEx, if you want it there absolutely overnight, FedEx it. Now, if I want to get it there in 5 days' time, I'll use someone else and pay that price, right? So get really clear about what it is that you're going to deliver. And then you don't have to get into over-promising.
Yeah, right.
If promising in many instances is how a small business owner, and I would argue even some big businesses, try to get the sale, as opposed to getting the sale through being absolutely known for delivering on that promise, being true to what it is that you live to serve your community on.
Excellent. And like you spoke about, being known for what you can deliver on, and known in your local community for, that, whether your community's, local or national or international. Where does that all start? Like, let's be honest, it's okay having a tagline if you want it to be there absolutely overnight. But, how do you get to that point where you come up with that tagline or that service?
Well, think about why you went into business in the first place. Certainly many small business owners start because it's a passion, or they think they can do it better than their boss. And, what did that look like? Why, was it that you wanted to, serve more people, or that you really wanted to help, the florists in Queensland have, growing businesses, excuse the pun. What is it that got you into business in the first place? What problem were you trying to solve? Business isn't about selling more widgets or selling more service hours. It's about solving problems for your customer. And the way you go about solving that problem is through a product or a service, right? So, but why do you want to solve that problem? Ask yourself that question. Why do you want to solve that problem? And ask yourself that question repeatedly. Why you might want to solve the problem that small business owners had in the 80s is not going to be the same in 2020.
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So get really clear about your why and what great looks like. In my book, it's all about CEX, the Essential Guide to Customer and Employee Experience. I talk about, being famous for delivering on your promise. But your promise has to be unique to you and be part of solving that problem. And the good news is you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the cheapest, but you have to be the most consistent. And that consistency of delivering on solving problems is what will win at the end of the day and get you attention. Today we don't share stuff on social media or with our friends and colleagues of organizations we don't know about, right?
Yeah,
But we
right.
definitely talk about those organizations that we just absolutely trust all the time. If someone asks you for a recommendation around an electrician, you're not going to say, well, go to White Pages or, True Local. You're going to say, well, I've had this guy or girl come to my place and I love them or hate them. And
Yeah,
these are the reasons why.
yeah, that's
And
good.
that's what every business should be trying to do, is just be known for delivering on whatever you promised.
Excellent. Now, you spoke about your book and you mentioned customer and also employee experience. Like, how important is it for a business brand organization to actually care for the employees to have a good experience?
Well, I would say that if you want a sustainable business, a business that can pivot and grow with the trends in the industry and the economies that we operate in, the first place to start is actually with your employees.
Right,
You
that
know,
makes sense.
I
Yeah,
can train people, you can train people. I think all your listeners can train people how to answer a telephone, smile, but what we can't train them to do is be consistent if they just think it's the worst place in the world,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
You can train someone to be good for a moment, but what you want is them to be absolutely committed to the organization that they're representing. And so that means that, yes, you still have to train them on what great looks like from a customer point of view because it's part of your promise, but their heart has to be in it. And their heart's not going to be in it if they themselves have an experience that some days, oh, this is the greatest boss, the greatest place to work, and then the next day, oh, is the boss looking? I want to hop on,
yeah.
my employment website. So if we start with our employees and get them absolutely dialed into two things: A, why we exist and how we serve customers, and B, what we do for them, and actually deliver on that, it makes a complete world of difference when they are then representing us and serving our customers.
Excellent. Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, you touched on it really, really briefly, but I'm just wondering, are there any case studies or organizations that you've worked with where they've improved the employee experience and seen a growth in their business exponentially?
Yeah, so I'll give you two examples. The first is one that I led. While I was at Volkswagen Group Australia, I joined that organization, and the contact center, on average, took more than 30 days to resolve a customer inquiry. Now,
Right.
I know averages should be a definitive number, right? But there were so many things that weren't measured properly. It's hard to know whether it was actually even longer than 30 days, but it was at least 30 days. And the turnover in that contact center, that call center, if you will, was over 100%. How can you have over 100%, more than over 100%? Because most people didn't last 3 weeks, let alone 12 months.
Right. Yeah.
It was disaster. And they were serving, and I'll use that term serving loosely, 20 odd thousand customers a year. Wind forward 5 years, same number of employees, serving 100,000 customers a year, and reducing, or I should say, resolving customers' inquiries in less than 2 days.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Now, didn't get more employees, serving 5 times the number of people, and doing it in 2.5 days instead of 30 plus days, or less than 2.5 days. And that came through getting clarity, being absolutely true to our word for what we were going to deliver to them as employees, and of course investing in them and making sure they knew what great looked like.
Yeah.
The team leader's job in the contact center wasn't to massage casework, it wasn't to take escalated calls. Like, that wasn't their primary purpose. Their primary purpose was to make sure the employee was being respected, the employee was getting developed, the employee was having an experience that meant that they could come and be fully present at work.
Excellent. That's really good. And so you talked about, the results there that you got for Volkswagen, which is amazing. I'm just wondering if you can share with us maybe 1, 2, or 3 other mistakes that you see commonly pop up in organizations or brands and businesses when it comes to, improving their customer and employee experiences.
Yeah, well, the first one is consistency. Now,
Right.
it's really easy to chase this new shiny glitter ball. What's hard is to be consistent at delivery.
Right,
And so, organizations, individuals, I myself are guilty of this at times. Oh, let's update the logo, let's change the website.
Yeah.
None of that matters at the end of the day if you're
No,
not
that's right.
actually delivering what you're promising.
Yeah.
The second problem that I see quite a lot is that when it comes to employees, the recruitment and the promises that we make during recruitment don't even get lived out on day one of their employment.
Yeah, right.
You know, the Ritz-Carlton is brilliant at this. The Ritz-Carlton has a thing called the employee promise, and it outlines exactly what the Ritz-Carlton leadership team are going to do every single day for their ladies and gentlemen, and they live it. And then the third area that I find most organizations struggle with is communication. Communication with their employees, communication with their customers. You know, often the excuse is, oh, but we don't have all the information. When I was at Target, we had a few scandals while I was at Target. One of those scandals was that Target was selling denim products that were made using a substance called an azo dye. It's what made your denim blue, and it was right throughout the industry for anything that was produced in Asia or certain parts of Asia. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't a regulated area, but when the news broke that we were using azo dyes and that it could be linked to cancer, as you can imagine, there was quite a response from the community. And we simply went about communicating with our customers and our employees what we knew in that moment and when they would get the next update. And so I can't remember the exact details, but let's just say we said at 8 a.m. every day we'll give an update on our social channels. Even at 8 a.m., if we had no new information, we would provide an update with what had happened and why we didn't have new information. That gave customers certainty that we were still focused on the matter. And it also reassured them that, you know, we were going to build trust back with them, because even in this small way, we're committing and delivering trust by constantly showing up when we say we're going to be. So when I say communication, there is no excuse for an organization not to communicate early and often, no matter the circumstances.
Right, that's really good. Now, Jason, I'd like to change gears for a little bit. You know, we started off with your story about how you sold computer equipment, and that led to, you know, selling whiteboard markers, up into, you know, some of the companies that you've worked with today. And, you know, during that time when you started out selling the computers, they were old. You know, the internet wasn't as developed as what it is now. Social media certainly wasn't around in the capacity that it is now. How has technology changed the way, you know, customers have a good experience, or employees have a good or great experience? And what do you see happening or changing in the future, you know, with technology and social media and the world being what it is?
Well, the first thing is that it's really empowered consumer choice.
Right.
It's become even easier for consumers to choose someone else.
Of course.
It's empowered them to know more than perhaps your employees do. A study done last year showed that 30% of customers are willing to change companies over one bad experience.
Right.
Now, the technology of today just makes that so simple for them to do and risk-free. The second thing that I think technology really enables today is the speed at which you can solve people's problems.
Yeah, that's really good.
Amazon, one of the best things that Amazon ever did was the one click to buy. Because they realized that if they could take out steps in the process, so effectively speed up the process for
reduce
customers,
the friction,
reduce the friction, they would sell more. And customers would be happier because they didn't have to think, right? And it still struggles. I still struggle when I go to a website and I'm 7 clicks deep before I've asked for a credit card, right? It's not rocket science. Get a Shopify account. And then the third area that I think that we're going to see with technology, and I think the pandemic has made this probably accelerate a little bit, is we've had the last decade of let's give people lots of information and lots of choice, and people have become overwhelmed. What we're starting to see is that people are using technology to kill the overwhelm and just get really focused on what information the individual needs in the moment. And that, you know, some of the most successful business coaches, business executives out there are focusing on 1 to 3 key messages and going deep on those, as opposed to trying to go a mile wide and overwhelm customers. So, you know, how can we I'm not saying go out and have 1 million landing pages if you have 1 million widgets. I'm saying, do you need 1 million widgets?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's really good.
And technology technology enables that. And then the final piece that technology, I think, really does enable that most businesses don't use to the right extent is actually the ability to listen. We have no excuses as business leaders not knowing how our customers and the community feels about us.
Yeah, that's really good. Excellent. Now, Jason, look, we're almost out of time. Before we wrap up, do you want to share us a little bit more information about where people can go maybe to get your book or reach out to you or connect with you in any way, shape or form?
Sure. So the website is jasonsbradshaw.com, and on all social networks, Jason S. Bradshaw as well. If you go to my website, you can download the first two chapters of my book for free. And that would be the best way to stay in touch with me, is just to connect on the website or through any of the social channels.
Excellent. And we'll make sure we put all of those links in the show notes. So, Jason, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks very much, Cam. I've really loved it.